All right. Well, let me first by saying yes, it's good to get off the schneid. I think we're 0-3 in these post game shows, so felt good to get a win. Like you said, it was looking like last night was the better night after Mookie went off and they crushed the Padres, but tonight wasn't so bad either. We got a win. Um, but as far as the story of the night goes, I think Belly and Kershaw are both, fantastic answers. It was great to see both of them have good nights. But if I had to choose one, I'm going with Kershaw. He didn't look great in his last start, but he came out tonight throwing 94, which was awesome to see. And not only was he throwing 94, but he was able to maintain that throughout. He was in there in the seventh inning and still hitting 94, and he was commanding well. He had all his pitches working. He only gave up one hit, which is the homer to Rendon, who he can't seem to figure out how to get out. But other than that, Rendon reached on two walks, and no one else even got on base the whole game. And no one even really hit the ball hard either. Looked like Kirsch was getting a lot of ground balls. He struck out six. He was efficient. He kept the pitch count pretty low, and he was able to get through 7 innings. So I think, to me, Belly breaking out and hitting two homers was great, but that was expected to come. He wasn't going to hit 160 all season. He was going to break out eventually. And he's still not fully out of it. I'm not going to act like all of a sudden, he's back to what he was, but it was good to see him get a couple tonight, and maybe that, improves his confidence. But to me, seeing the Clayton Kershaw we thought we had after his first start, and then we thought we might not have had after his second start, for him to get back to being the great Kershaw, I thought that was great to see. Yeah, I could hear you. Yeah. Yeah, good luck with that. But yeah, I'll talk about Belly for a sec. He actually I thought he started coming out of it last night. He had two balls hard last night. Both of them were caught, so he didn't really have anything to show for it. But I think if you combine the exit velocities of those two balls, they were actually higher than his two home run balls tonight. So that's two nights in a row where he's looking more like himself. Like I just said, he's not all the way back yet. I'd like to see him, repeat it a few nights in a row and get hot a little bit. But I've emphasized all season long that there's no reason to be concerned about Belly. Just, he's off to a slow start. It happens. He's not the only star in baseball that's gotten off to a slow start. We've seen it with like Kristen Yelich and Ronald Acuna, although he started to come out of it a little bit. But it happens. It was a short summer camp or spring training, whatever you want to call it. Um, but it's good to see him get a couple balls tonight. The team's been homering a lot, and he hasn't really been getting in on it. So I bet that felt good for him to get in on it. And hopefully, he could continue it into the weekend. This would be a good series to get, take two out of three or even get a sweep. I don't know. Yeah, no worries. I hear you just fine. So maybe without a mic, I don't use a mic. Hmm, it's weird. Yeah, I could hear you just fine. I don't know why anyone else can. It figures that the first post game show where we get a win is the first time we have technical difficulties like this. Yeah, yeah, he hasn't typically been a ground ball pitcher throughout his career. He's been more of a strikeout guy and fly ball guy, but I mean, when he's getting ahead early and pounding the strike zone, I think it was just one of those nights where guys were beating it into the ground and the defense was making plays behind him. I think through the first 4 innings, there was 12 outs total, and Kike made 6 plays at second base. So and some of them were shifted up the middle, some were shifted in the 3-4 hole for lefties. So he was all over the place. But I think that was just a product of Kershaw pounding the zone. He had his fastball working, and the Angels hitters, they weren't waiting. That's often what you see with Kershaw is guys don't want to get to 0-2 because they know either the slider or the curveball's coming, so they want to attack early, and that's what we saw tonight. And they were just beating it into the ground, not a ton of hard contact at all.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here we go. I think we might have figured this out. Maybe we've got it coming on through our through my headphones. Let me know on Facebook or YouTube if you can hear me now. But it looks like it's showing up on my device, so hopefully that's the case
Help,
on
help
other
the man
people's
out.
devices. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess they can't hear me if.
Oh yeah, if you still can't hear Jeff, leave a comment and let him know because he's still trying to work out these issues.
Okay. Shout out to Andy Martin. Says he can hear me now. Good. Perfect. Well, it only
Okay,
took us about 10 minutes to figure this out. So thanks for your patience on that. Daniel, thanks for carrying the heavy load
yeah,
on
no.
that. So just for those that are joining, I said this earlier and clearly nobody heard me, so I apologize for that. But the biggest question we've got tonight is what's your storyline? Is it Kershaw? Is it Bellinger? Who's the headline for you as you think about this game? And Daniel, I was fixing sound stuff. So you said Kershaw for you is the bigger headline, was that right?
Yes, yes. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and I'm curious to hear what some of the fans think as
Yeah,
well.
I was surprised. I mean, on Twitter, I posted that question, and I got a lot of Kershaw, which I was actually surprised about. I guess because Kershaw's only started twice. He had one great start. He had one pretty, I don't know, average slash mediocre start. And so for me, it was like Bellinger has looked so rough that to me that seemed like the headline. Now, as you pointed out, I think last night he had some exit velocity stuff that looked encouraging. So that was good. And so maybe people thinking, but there are some other folks on Twitter that are still seeing some of the same problems in his swing that
Hmm.
maybe has led him to have the low average and the low sort of the misfortune that he's had so far. Now, all that said, I mean, the two balls he hit were pretty impressive. I mean, I think the second one maybe more so just to be able to take a
Definitely.
ball opposite field, basically dead center, was pretty impressive. So for me, I don't know. I think that was the most encouraging thing. On one hand, Bellinger, as weird as it sounds, is probably less important to this team, and that's because of games like last night where you've got
Hmm.
Mookie Betts hitting 3 home runs, you've got AJ Pollock who's swinging the bat really well, you've got Corey Seager swinging the bat really well.
Right.
So maybe he's less important compared to a guy like Kershaw, who at the end of the day is like if he's not on in October or whatever month the playoffs happen this year, that's going to be a problem. So it's tough, but I think sort of in the context of this season, I tend to lean towards Bellinger just because it just felt like significant, and maybe his swing and stuff isn't tweaked, but maybe he just gets out of his own head a little bit. And we've got some people kind of agreeing on both sides. Roland just noted it's just a huge for his confidence, and I think that's where I land. It's
Yeah.
just from a confidence perspective. Whereas Kershaw, you're probably not worried about last start affecting him, but as fans, I mean, obviously, when he gets up there, you never know when the end's going to come. And so tonight was a reminder that it's a long way off.
Yeah, yeah, and I think with Bellinger, I think you hit it right on the head as far as his confidence goes. I think it was a big night for his confidence. But like you said, I saw the same tweets as well, where his swing is still a little off. He's not getting the same angle as he was last year. He's a big launch angle guy, and as we've seen this year, he's been hitting a lot of balls into the ground. He's had a flatter swing. So I still think there are some tweaks for him to be made, and that's why I'm not, completely buying in that he's all the way back to his MVP form yet. But I think with Kershaw more so than the results, it was just really cool to see him, hitting 94 and keeping his velocity throughout and just being in control all night. We've seen that so many times from him in his career, but not as much the last, couple years. So
Yeah.
I liked what I saw from Kershaw a lot.
Well, and let me add two things that really struck me. So Kershaw finishes the night with 6 strikeouts. 5 of the 6 strikeouts came in the 5th, 6th, and 7th innings, which is significant because that's typically when a starting pitcher actually starts to lose their form. Guys are seeing him for the second, maybe even the third time. And so for him to get 5 strikeouts in those 3, I think was significant. And those were big strikeouts. It's not like he was striking out nobody. And the second thing, which I touched on briefly earlier, he had 14 balls put in play against him. 12 of them were ground balls. 12 of them were ground balls. Kike Hernandez, I think, had like 7 putouts in the first 5 innings. He had that unbelievable. I mean, Kike Hernandez, that play that he made at second, it was one of those things where you had to keep rewatching it, and then it's almost like I had to imagine myself trying to make that play and how I would contort my body and how do you get enough force and balance and everything to get the ball the way he does. And so, those things were impressive. One guy on YouTube just noted this was Kershaw's first game since September of 2016 where he had only 1 hit through at least 5 innings. So that's pretty impressive. And again, I mean, the 1 hit was a home run. He walked Rendon twice, but other than that was the other funny stat. Rendon was the only guy to reach base against Kershaw, but he reached base 3 times. So I think it was good. I think Kershaw, you kind of see this and you're like, okay, we're good to go. Bellinger, it's sort of like, hey, this is a good start, but like we need to see it a little bit more consistently, I think, before we do anything. So that was a big one. I mean, the other funny thing that I think we do need to talk about is our boy Austin Barnes. You and I think just basically everybody who's a Dodger fan has been hard on Austin Barnes, rightfully so. And it's you do what you who knows. But here's Austin Barnes. First of all, do you know what his batting average is right now? If you had to guess, over under 225, are you guessing over or under for Austin Barnes?
What is he, like 6 for 11 in his last few games? So I'll go a little over.
A little over is correct. 226. 226 for boy outside. Although actually, I think that was before tonight. I think I'm looking at an old page, but yeah.
So he's 257 now.
257. I mean, that's what's crazy about the small sample size, right? Somebody would look at Austin Barnes' line and think this guy was just. I mean, he's probably like top 5 in the team in batting average at this point. But here's Austin Barnes' last 4 games. So 3 starts, 1 pinch hitting. He went 2 for 4 on Tuesday, 1 for 1 in a pinch hitting opportunity Wednesday, 2 for 4 on Thursday. That included the home run. And then again tonight, another 2 for 4 with another run. I mean, he's hitting the ball hard. He's lining the ball all over the place. The home run felt fortunate to me more than anything else. But, I mean, he does seem to be hitting it on a rope. Has anything changed for you with Austin Barnes?
I mean, we've seen a good we've seen a good version of Austin Barnes before, right? He had a great 2017 season, so it's not like this is something completely foreign. But he's just been so bad the last couple years that it's still surprising to see him, have a 4-game span like that where he's not only getting hits, but he's actually hitting the ball hard, and he hit a home run, and I honestly think it couldn't have come at a better time because Will Smith's hurt right now, he's dealing with the neck issue, so Barnes is the only healthy catcher on the roster right now, so it's his show right now, and he's making the most of it. So we've had a lot of negative things to say about Austin Barnes, but right now I have nothing negative to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got to eat crow a little bit on that. I mean, 257 at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't feel right. I mean, it doesn't feel like 257, but there we go. Andy Martin asked on YouTube, was there anything bad that came out of this game for you? I mean, I can answer first, and I see no negative out of this game for me. I mean, I think um, just on the whole, everything looked top to bottom. I mean, you look at the lineup. Betts was 0 for 4, Seager's 0 for 5, Kike's 0 for 4. Everybody else had a hit. Barnes had 2, Bellinger had 2, Turner had 2. Um, and then obviously pitching wise, Pedro Baez. I mean, he was a little rough. Blake Trinan gave up a run, but I mean, this was a bullpen that came in with I think 20 and 2/3 scoreless innings coming in. So to overreact to a Pedro Baez moment or to a Blake Trinan moment in a game with a big lead. For me, I've got nothing negative. I guess if you wanted to find one, maybe Baez wasn't super impressive, but I don't know. I was pretty impressed, and the people who didn't perform tonight have performed lately.
Yeah, yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. If I was to bring up one negative, I was going to say Baez, and not necessarily because of the results. I think just his velocity's been down to start the year. He was only throwing 94 tonight. We're used to seeing him at 96, 97. And he's a fastball reliant pitcher. He loves throwing that fastball at the top of the strike zone. And 94 just isn't the same as 97. So, he didn't look horrible tonight. He got a couple outs, gave up a hit and a walk, and then got taken out just because his pitch count ran a little high. But I think that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. If he's going to be throwing 94 the whole season, he might not have the same type of year that he had the last couple years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and if we're talking about Baez too, I mean, he's another guy that I've mentioned in previous stuff. His batting average on balls in play last year was unbelievably. It was an outlier in the good luck for Baez category. So, and Joe Kelly was kind of the opposite. Those were the two guys I compared. One was about 100 points better than average. The other was about 100 points worse than average. So, now the flip side, a lot of the other analytics really favored Baez. So maybe that batting average on balls in play was partly due to his nasty stuff. And I mean, he did throw a couple nasty changeups tonight. So again, I'm not with a bullpen guy. It's easy to overreact, but the bullpen has been so good. This game was basically out of hand when those guys came in. That would be it for me. There was one
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
we're just nitpicking there. Yeah, we're just getting super, nitpicky. And yeah, if there's any a time where the bullpen is gonna not look great and give up a couple runs, I'm fine with it being in a 7-1 game as opposed to, them blowing a 1-run game. So
Totally.
yeah, not a huge deal by any means.
So one question that we've gotten from a couple people on YouTube is, what happens if Will Smith goes on to the DL? Would it be an opportunity for a guy like Keibert Ruiz to get called up? Obviously, in summer camp, they had Rocky Gale. He seemed to be the guy that might be the next up. Well, what do you think? I mean, do you think Ruiz gets the call up there, or do you think it's Rocky Gale and Ruiz waits another year?
It's tough to answer that question just because we don't get any sort of video from what's going on at their alternate training site at USC. So I have no clue how Ruiz has looked over there. But if I had to guess, I would say it's Rocky Gale just because it's not a long-term type of deal for Smith. He might be out for a week or so. So you could call up Gale and Barnes will start, all but one or two of the games, give Gale a start or two. And he's played at the big league level before, so he could, fill in there and at least play good defense, maybe not do too much with the bat. I don't think they're in any rush to call up Keibert Ruiz if he's not ready. And we didn't even see much of him at summer camp either, just because he reported late for unknown reasons that we could speculate about, but that's not important anymore. But we just haven't seen a lot of him. He hasn't, played at the big league level. I will say he's on the 40-man roster already, so it wouldn't take, any sort of drastic roster moves to call him up. But I don't know if they want to start his service time clock if they don't need to. If it's just a backup role where he might get one start.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that are unfamiliar, Ruiz is a 22-year-old catcher for the Dodgers. He's one of the top 100 prospects in baseball. Most people have him ranked as about the third prospect on the Dodgers behind Gavin Lux and Dustin May. So this is a high-level guy, but he is just 22. He hasn't seen gotten a ton of experience at some of the upper levels, and so it would be interesting. I mean, obviously, part of the conversation has to be service time too. Do the Dodgers really want to burn a year of service time, in a year like this when a guy they've made it pretty clear that the catching position is not one in which they're going to prioritize offense. I mean, the fact that Austin Barnes was playing as much as he is. Now, Rocky Gale is a even worse hitting version of Austin Barnes. Um, but I don't think they care a whole lot. I think they look at the rest of this team and they say 1 through 8, we're going to be just fine. And if our ninth hitter hits like a pitcher or worse than a pitcher, then we'll just take it. So that will be an interesting thing. And Tyler on YouTube also notes, we're still waiting on Lux too, which we've talked about on previous shows. Who knows? We don't get to see. We don't know. Maybe he looks unbelievable. Maybe he looks terrible. It's interesting that there's no reports. I mean, I don't know where those reports would be coming from. But I mean, the guys in front of him are healthy and hitting. Like Muncy got the night off tonight, but Muncy's not a guy that's going to get sat down so Gavin Lux can start getting at bats. Chris Taylor's hitting the ball well. I mean, Kike's the guy. He was 0 for 4 again tonight. We've talked about before. He's been really, really rough offensively. He was great defensively tonight. So, I mean, that's a spot where I think you could see something. Now, Kike is such an integral part of the clubhouse, it feels like. I don't know what they would do there. Maybe a guy like Matt Beatty gets sent down so that Kike can stay with the club. But Lux will be an interesting one to watch as well. I mean, we're well past the service time, I believe. So they could call him up and not really sacrifice anything there. But that'll be another interesting thing. And one other thing, I mean, just this game, obviously, Dodgers win. It was a great win. I want to talk a little bit about last night because you and I didn't get a chance to do a show. Last night was an unbelievable game, obviously. Your boy Seager gets a home run. A.J. Pollock crushes a home run. I was on Twitter today. A.J. Pollock's home run was listed at like 424 feet. I just simply refuse to believe that ball was like 10 feet further than Austin Barnes' home run. That ball looks like 440 at least. But beside the point, Mookie Betts gets 3. I mean, his first home run was unbelievable. A ball that's off the plate. He puts it into right center field, opposite field. Unbelievable. And he just looked dialed in. I mean, reactions from you. Obviously, Mookie Betts is the headline last night. But looking back on last night's game, since we're here, what did you think about that one?
Yeah, that was a blast to watch. I mean, the bats broke out a little bit the night before in the later innings. But up until that, they had been pretty quiet for a few days there. So it was good to see them break out. And we're just seeing, pretty much every night how great of a player Mookie is. And then today, he announces the event he's having in Compton this week. So he's doing outstanding things already, both on and off the field. And we talk about him every show and how great he is, but every show he gives us something great to talk about, so it's incredible. He's now tied for the most 3 home run games in MLB history with Johnny Mize and Sammy Sosa, 6 3 home run games, and he's only 27, so he's going to have plenty of time to break that record.
Yeah, I mean, the Dodger offense yesterday, of the 15 hardest hit balls in that game, 11 of them were from the Dodgers. The funniest stat, I think, of that entire game is the Dodgers hit 6 home runs. The hardest hit ball of the game was a line out from Cody Bellinger. So that was one of those games where it was like Mookie hits 3 home runs, but part of it felt like, if not for that number, the storyline was going to be Bellinger starting to put it together. He just roped 2 balls. He had 102 mile an hour out in the first inning, or in his first at bat, like 109 in his second. So that was another positive storyline as well. And then obviously, I mean, the fact that they did it against the Padres, this is this team that's up and coming, that feels like they've given the Dodger contention. They've got Chris Paddock on the mound, their best pitcher, and then it's like, dude just got rocked. And then flip to the other side, you've got a guy like Julio Urias, who has been average at best this season, hasn't been impressive, and he struggled at the beginning and then just absolutely got dialed in. I mean, was just dominant the last 2/3 of his start last night. He finishes the game allowing just 2 hits, I believe, or 5 hits, 6 1/3, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 strikeouts. Again, those 2 home runs were both in the first inning. It's almost 3.
Yeah.
But after those 2 home runs, nothing earned the rest of the time. Just absolutely dominant from then on out.
Yeah, I think he retired 17 of the final 19 hitters he faced, so he was just locked in. And that was good to see because he's kind of the guy who doesn't really get talked about in this rotation. You got obviously Kershaw and Buehler, and then Dustin May's been great. He's throwing that 99-mile-an-hour sinker, and that's a blast to watch. So no one really talks about Urias, but he's quietly, been pretty good. He's got a 2.57 ERA, I believe. He's 2-0. He's he pitched deep into the game. He got into the seventh inning last night. So I think that was a huge positive to see, and we're still kind of looking to see who's going to fill out that rotation in the postseason. So I think his name is in the mix as anyone.
Yeah, and I think they've said, Dustin May has basically earned his spot in the rotation.
Yeah.
So he's locked in. Buehler's locked in. Kershaw's locked in. You've got Urias. You've got Gonsolin, who struck out 8 the other night. You've got Alex Wood, who's hurt. You've got Stripling, who's pitched well, but, I mean, it might be the guy on the outside looking in. He was sort of the sixth man. Then May probably has jumped him in the pecking order. He's probably most comfortable in relief. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces. And even last night, I mean, let's not forget your boy, Dennis Santana. I say your boy because you really liked him at one summer camp thing. But, I mean, he was really good. An inning and 2/3 last night, 1 hit, no runs. Then Jake McGee comes in. I mean, and you want to talk about a guy that has surprised everyone. Jake McGee, 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, no earned runs this season. The guy has been lights out, 0.57 whip. So the Dodgers were just dialed last night, and that just felt like, somebody I follow on Twitter basically tweeted, the Padres are nice and all, but the Dodgers basically decided to remind them that they're one of the greatest teams ever assembled, which I think is probably maybe an exaggeration, maybe a little too early for that. But it did feel like one of those moments where it's like, okay, this is real cute, Padres, but let me just remind you, your best pitcher's on the mound. We're going to rough him up. We're going to throw our number 4 starter out. He's going to dominate you. We're going to throw bullpen arms at you that you have no chance against. And it was just sort of like, okay, you're not there yet, San Diego.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think one other thing that's been really cool to see the last couple of days is Mookie he might be kind of locked into that leadoff spot, which we've talked about a lot, that we want to see. And I've also talked about how Seager should be hitting second, and he's been there the last 2 nights. So I think we're getting closer to the point where you could maybe lock in, the first 4 or 5 hitters in that lineup with Mookie, Seager, JT, and Cody.
Yeah.
And then, Pollock and Muncy, or Muncy and Pollock after that, depending on if, Max starts hitting. But I think that's just that continuity is really good for these guys. They're all professional hitters, obviously, but I think once you get locked into a spot, you could get comfortable there. You know who's behind you, you know who's in front of you. I think that's really good, and I'm happy to see, if it took, not hitting for 3 nights for Dave Roberts to finally realize, let's just lock these guys into their spots, then so be it. We got to this point at least.
Yeah, and I remain skeptical about how important it is to be in the leadoff spot versus the number 2 spot, but yeah. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to fight this. Like, Mookie Betts hits 3 home runs. Now he's 0 for today, right? So it's like the argument could be like, hey, you love the leadoff spot so much. Corey Seager and Mookie Betts were both 0 for today. But regardless, yesterday was an amazing game for the Dodgers. And, and a big one, for a lot of different reasons. So let's look ahead to tomorrow. We've got Walker Buehler on the mound versus Andrew Heaney, one-time Dodger, very temporarily a Dodger, but he was a Dodger at one point.
For like a couple hours.
For a couple hours. He was a couple hours. And that's one of those trades that you look back on and you're like, maybe that one didn't work out so well for the Dodgers. Now, they're obviously not short on starting pitching, but he was basically traded for Howie Kendrick. So, take it or leave it. Kendrick was what he was when he was a Dodger. But Heaney's got a 4.26 ERA, which you could look at and look down upon. Well, Buehler's got a 4.40 ERA. So, deciding what you want to do. Heaney's last start out, 5 runs, 3 2/3. Obviously, the Dodgers seem to get some things going tonight. What do you think? What are you thinking as you look ahead to tomorrow night?
Yeah, I want to see Buehler kind of start to get deep into a game. He's been, continuing to build himself up. He didn't really pitch much in summer camp, so I don't think he's thrown more than like 75 pitches in a game. So I'd like to see him, get through 6 or 7 innings and throw 90 or so pitches, kind of like Kershaw did tonight. And then as far as Heaney goes, he's not a bad pitcher. We talk about how bad this Angels rotation is. He's maybe their first or second best pitcher, but in most other rotations, he's probably a 4th or 5th starter. On the Dodgers, he would be like their 8th or 9th. So I'm mainly gonna be watching Buehler to see how he looks. If Buehler gets going, kind of like Cody, then it's just kind of over for the league. If those are arguably the 2 most talented players on the team, and they haven't really done a whole lot this season, and the team's still 13-7 and in first place. Sorry. so yeah, I'm hoping, for a great night for Bueller tomorrow night.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to your point, he's kind of the last guy. I mean, I guess Muncy would be in that list, but when you think of the superstars, that started slow. He's figured it out. Kershaw is back. Bueller Bellinger, 2 home runs tonight. So if Bueller can come out tomorrow, 6 innings, 8 or 9 Ks, 1 or 0 earned runs, I mean, that would be the type of start where it's just like, all right, the Dodgers are dialed in, and this thing's going to get scary. Of course, so that's 6:40 tomorrow night, Dodgers and Angels. The following day, 1:10 on Sunday, we've got Dustin May versus Julio Teheran. I can never pronounce his last name, but he's not very good. 13.5 ERA. I think he gave up 5 runs in 2 innings in his first and only start of the season. So, that'll be an interesting sort of how can the Dodgers. These are the types of games where if the Dodgers want to get first place, if they want to sort of assert their dominance, this is the type of series where you look ahead and you say, we should win both of these games and we should win them handily.
Yeah, and if you look, they've quietly won 3 straight now. So if they could, maybe take 2 more games from the Angels, then they play the Mariners for 4. So we could be looking at, a little bit of a win streak here. If they could get tomorrow's game and Sunday's game. So
yeah,
should be a good one. Should be fun to watch. And it's good to see them, actually playing good baseball. This earlier in the week was not fun to watch. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah, well, and everybody's loved the Dodgers broadcast putting up the Dodgers schedule where you've got all the A's for the Angels and all the S's for Seattle. I mean, that's been a great Twitter thing. They threw it up again tonight, which, part of me wonders if these people are just giving it to us. It's like they have to know. They have to know that that's what it looks like and that's what it says. Yeah. Maybe it's a sponsor thing. Who knows? But, here's an interesting one. Harold asks on YouTube, trade deadline's coming up quickly. Do you think the Dodgers will make a big move, a medium move, or stay with what they have? My immediate reaction is I think they'll stay with what they have. I just don't see where the massive upgrade is going to come. I mean, I suppose if an elite starting pitcher was out there, maybe the Dodgers would make a move. But I remember Andrew Friedman, who was on Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser's podcast, kind of talking about this, and he said, hey, nobody really knows how this is going to play out. Our price is going to be high. Our price is going to be low. I saw someone today tweet basically, hey, there's probably 3 teams that are sellers right now. There's 3 teams that are way worse than everybody else. Everybody else is still in. I mean, the San Francisco Giants think they have a chance to make the playoffs. So that should tell you everything you need to know. Yeah. Now, they probably know they have no chance of getting out of the first round. But so that's my gut. And on one hand, I just don't think very many teams are going to sell. On the other hand, I mean, what would the Dodgers add?
Yeah. I think with the expanded postseason this year, there's a lot of teams that, think they could be in it and they may or may not be, but there's not a ton of sellers out there. But what we've seen from this Dodgers team, I don't really see any holes. Their lineup's great and they're not even clicking on all cylinders yet. The bullpen has been, outstanding. Usually we're sitting here before the trade deadline talking about, what should they add 2 or 3 bullpen arms, but I don't think they really need anything down there. So the one thing would maybe be, like you said, a top-end starter, but I don't really know who's going to be available. If Texas falls out of it, maybe Lance Lynn. He looked great again tonight. He's off to a great start this year. But I think the rotation, is definitely good enough. Obviously, Kershaw and Bueller are locks, so you only really need 2 more postseason starters. And with May, Urias, and Gonsolin looking as good as he have, and then Stripling and Wood there as well, I think you could find 2 guys. And with the bullpen, you wouldn't even be asking them to go, too deep into games. So I don't think the rotation's a huge concern. So maybe they look for a veteran right-handed bat to come off the bench, like they did with David Freese a couple years ago, maybe something like that. But I really don't think they need a whole lot. And one other aspect as well is that there's no minor league season this year, so teams aren't really able to evaluate prospects from other organizations, so that makes trading a little tougher as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know one guy that people probably thought might be on the trading block at some point this season was a guy like Trevor Bauer, who's been unbelievable for the Reds this year. But the problem is, I mean, you look and say, oh, the Reds are 9-11. Well, the problem is they're in second place in their division. All they have to do is, I mean, they're in the playoffs right now. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors at play. I think it's the easy thing is to say they're not going to do anything because that's obviously the most likely scenario. But, I mean, I just look down the roster and I say there's not a position where you say, oh, that's a weakness, right? I mean, even you look in the outfield, they have Betts and Bellinger every day. A.J. Pollock's crushing it. Josh Peterson's a guy you trust, even if he's not hitting super well. On the infield, you've already got a surplus of guys. If you're looking at someone like Muncy figuring it out, if you're looking at Chris Taylor, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Will Smith behind the plate, I just don't see, where the hole is, where that trade starts to come from. So,
yeah. And when you're talking about additions, it doesn't necessarily need to come from outside the organization. They could call up Gavin Lux at some point, and that's a pretty solid addition right there. If the bullpen needs some arms, they still got AJ Ramos, who hasn't been called up yet.
Yeah.
So that could be an addition there. So I think with the guys they have on the roster and the guys they have in their 60-man player pool, I think they'll be fine. Terrence Gore is still there if they want to add a speed guy. So they got everything covered, I feel like.
Yeah, and Colton Barksdale on YouTube makes a good point. I think that Dustin May, the question would be is, do they trust him? We talk about all these guys. Obviously, Kershaw and Buehler you trust. In the past, you've had guys like Maeda. You've had guys like Ryu. You've had guys like Rich Hill that you really trust in the postseason. I think Ryu's been one of their better postseason pitchers of late. So that's the one thing. I think they thought with David Price that was going to be a guy they could just pencil into that spot as just a trusted arm in the postseason. So it'll be interesting. I mean, did they trust Dustin May to go out there and start a game? Did they trust Urias to start a game? I think they'd love it if a guy like Alex Wood could figure stuff out, but he looked so rough in his first outing. You hope it was injury related. He comes back healthy and everything looks figured out. But I mean, I hesitate to think Alex Wood's one of the 6 or 7 best guys. And if Ross Stripling or if Tony Gonsolin, I mean, if those guys are starting a game 3 or a game 4, I wouldn't feel super great about it. So, I mean, Dustin May has the talent. I think the Dodgers have the talent 1 through 4 to find 4 incredible starting pitchers, but do they have numbers 3 and 4 as guys you can trust in a big spot?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. But I will say, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, if a guy like Dustin May is getting the ball in a postseason start, they're not necessarily counting on him to go 6, 7, 8 innings. If he could give them 4 or 5 good innings, get through the lineup twice, then you just unleash that bullpen from the 5th inning on, and I think they'll be all right. But we gotta see more out of him. He's only had 3 or 4 starts this season, so let's see how he continues to pitch, and then we'll worry about the postseason rotation as at least September starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me end with one other story. This is kind of a breaking story that's hitting, and we'll see. By tomorrow morning, we'll probably know whether this is a big story or not. But Ken Rosenthal tweeted out just under an hour ago that a Reds player has tested positive for COVID-19. The Reds played and beat the Pirates tonight. So this player must have taken this test prior to the game and found out he tested positive after the game. Again, this is a player. We don't know what that means. It could be a bullpen arm that never saw the field. It could be the first baseman who interacted with every single person. The big news, obviously, is that it's yet another team. The Cardinals still have only played 5 baseball games this season, but them and the Marlins have basically been the only 2 to have positive tests, to have major issues. Now the Reds have one. Is this a big story when we wake up tomorrow morning? Is this no story when we wake up tomorrow morning? What do you think?
I mean, I'm hoping for the best, but so far from what we've seen throughout the league is when a team gets a positive test, usually a few more trickle in the coming days. Yeah. So, but hopefully, since we had the little wake up call of the Marlins and the Cardinals, hopefully the Reds were taking it more seriously, and if that's the case, if teams are taking it as seriously as the Dodgers and not high-fiving and not standing close to each other in the dugout, then it doesn't necessarily have to be, if one guy tests positive, then we get 10 the next day or the next 2 days. So if they're taking things seriously, then maybe it's just him, or maybe it's him and 2 other guys, and it's nothing drastic. But it's unfortunate that, with the nature of the testing, they're getting tested every day or every other day or whatever it is, but those results don't always come in. So it's unfortunate that they didn't get the test before their game tonight. So, a whole nother team could possibly be at risk. Yeah. But we're just going to have to let it play out and see what happens.
Yeah, I saw even an NFL guy was reporting on some training camp stuff, and he noted that, he's like, there's a big loophole here. He's a media guy, so the media, in his case, gets tested every morning. but they never get those results until the afternoon.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and then afterwards you get your test. So he's basically saying, so I could test negative one day. I could go out and do whatever I wanted to. Then I could get tested in the morning. Then I could go be in the bubble with all of these players, none of whom are wearing masks and all of this. And then nobody would know if I was positive until after the fact. So it is,
Exactly.
I mean, obviously it doesn't seem like there's a better solution. And with baseball players, you hope it's a little different because you hope you've got some control over what these guys are doing in between, negative test number one and when they take the next test. But obviously not, right? Like obviously
Yeah.
somehow this person who's being tested, I would imagine every day, or at least every other day, has now tested positive. And so, yeah, I mean, if they test positive on Friday, I'd have to go look at the Reds' schedule. Have the Reds been traveling lately? Like, did the Reds have to get on a plane at some point? Was this person sitting on a plane with a bunch of other folks? These are the types of things that matter. And as you said, I do think it'll be an interesting thing to track. Is this is this the type of thing that can be controlled by social distancing and all of that, or is it not? So
exactly.
it'll definitely be interesting. It looks like the Reds were at home, but then they did travel to Pittsburgh to play tonight. So they would have had to travel. Actually, they might have been in. I can't tell. They might have all been home games. So in which case, that would be a positive thing, I guess, if they didn't have to travel. But that'll definitely be an interesting story. So for those watching it live, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know if did you get the chance to listen to that Joe Kelly podcast, Big Swing podcast?
I didn't. I've seen the quotes though. I've seen the quotes.
Okay, well, no, other than the Astro stuff and the bashing MLB stuff, one point that he did bring up is that when they're on team planes traveling from city to city, the flight attendants and stuff aren't getting tested. So when they're on the planes, they're around flight attendants who could possibly have it, and so it doesn't seem like all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed as far as the protocols go, which is definitely unfortunate. But yeah, we're just hoping for the best with this Reds scenario.
And it does feel, I mean, I don't want to be the pessimistic, doomsday scenario person, but it does feel like at what point do they draw the line? Like the St. Louis Cardinals have played 5 games. The Dodgers, they haven't played in over 2 weeks. The Dodgers have played 21. They just moved into first place. They're 14-7, a full game up on the Colorado Rockies. But I mean, that's crazy to me. Obviously, the Marlins are a mess. They're way behind in their game. But it feels like, all these different little bits and pieces at some point, or do they just say, hey, you know what? Like, we're just going to control it. We're going to mitigate it. And, I mean, it definitely feels like we're at least moving towards the possibility of at least one team, the Cardinals, maybe more, not playing 60 games and having to figure out how you compare all those things. But, yeah, I don't know. But I mean, to Joe Kelly's point, I mean, there's so many points of risk that exist. And, in some ways, the fact that only 2 teams have been impacted and now maybe a third is remarkable and impressive. And on the other hand, once the Cardinals and once the Marlins got infected, it was a mess. It was an absolute disaster. So you could kind of be optimistic, you could be pessimistic, but I'll just be really fascinated to see how this goes. And you feel bad for teams that seem to be doing the right things and keeping things under control. But part of this virus is like maybe it is some of this stuff isn't in your control. Like some of this stuff is just like bad luck. You could do everything right, and you could probably still have issues.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we saw with the Indians too, with 2 of their pitchers got caught going out to a bar. So I mean, hopefully we stop seeing stuff like that. Hopefully other players could learn from those guys' mistakes and not, put themselves and their teammates and their families at, extra risk.
Yeah.
There's already enough risk involved as it is. So we don't need to be doing, it's only a few months here. You could not go to a bar for a few months. Let's get through the season, and then during the off season, if that's what you want to do, then go for it, because at that point you're not putting, all these people at risk.
The Cleveland story is amazing. Basically, the latest I heard today is that those 2 guys had to drive to meet the team today in Detroit, I believe, to sort of plead their case to the team. They were hoping to be reinstated, brought back for the weekend series. Some people thought Clevenger was going to pitch. So they spoke in front of the whole team. The team asked some questions. heard their answers, and then basically decided, hey, you're getting options. Like, you're going down to
Yeah.
minor league camp, which means at least 10 days they're away from the team. And those are, their two best pitchers so far this season.
Yeah.
Clevenger's their best pitcher, and Plesac has been their best pitcher. And so, I mean, for me, it's good on Cleveland for getting their crap together. And, and the quotes are unbelievable in that story, which I think is hopefully opening some guys up. Like, their teammates are not holding back. Like, basically, like,
Yeah. Good for them.
we can't trust these guys. Like, we don't
Yeah.
want, like, we have, Carlos Carrasco is a cancer survivor. Like, they have
Yeah.
Terry Francona. Like, these are, like, incredibly high-risk individuals, and these guys didn't care. They violated all the protocols, and so their teammates are saying, screw you. We can't trust you. We all want to be headed in the right direction, and you guys aren't headed in that direction. So peace out, and I mean, that'll be a fascinating clubhouse dynamic to watch. Do those guys earn back trust, or does this become a talking point? But it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and good for the teammates for calling them out like that and saying what they had to say, because I feel like I would feel the same way. I wouldn't be too happy even if it was my best friend. They did something dumb and stupid, and they're paying the price for it. Luckily, as far we haven't heard there's any positive tests on the Indians, so they might have gotten away with it this time as far as health goes. But yeah, hopefully that's the last we see of silly decisions like that. And then one other thing I wanted to bring up is the story that came out this week. I think it was Jeff Passan reported that they're talking about possibly doing a bubble for the postseason, and I think that's a great idea. We've seen it with the other leagues, the NBA, WNBA, MLS,
Yeah.
NHL. They've all done bubbles, and I don't think there's been a single positive test for any of those leagues. So I think if they could find a way to make it work for the postseason to do 2 or 3 bubbles or whatever it is, I think that's just a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely will be something fascinating to watch. So, well, hey, we appreciate you all sticking with us, watching through. Again, apologies for the sound technical difficulties we had at the beginning. We're glad we were able to fix that out. Hopefully the microphone I'm using right now isn't too terrible, but we appreciate you guys watching. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com tonight. Check out our YouTube page. We'll have lots of post-game interviews and recaps and all sorts of stuff as we continue in the Freeway Series against the Angels. Hopefully we can get a win Saturday, another win Sunday, and close this thing out with a sweep. So, as always, that's Daniel. I'm Jeff. We appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time.